Well, from the perspectives that I come from when we talk about the evolution of consciousness, big picture evolution of consciousness is moving towards unity. And so unity means a container that holds everything. So that's in the world, you know, where we have a tendency like that's out and this is in and this is good and that's bad, and then, you know, a couple decades later it all flips itself over. That's part of the evolution of consciousness. But the same thing is happening within the individual. And I see that particularly as people age, one of the big developmental steps in aging is the integration of the masculine and feminine. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Just we live the human life experience. We're human beings, which means we do come into this existence in a female body or a male body, sometimes not always that clear cut, but if we're talking in general terms. And our task is to come into that, come into our woman's self and whatever that means. And of course, it's not a one ticket, one model for every person, but to find if you're born as a woman, to find your own particular and unique way into that. And as much as it's particular and unique, we also obviously share a lot of commonalities, common ground, and as a man, similarly. And that allows us to step into our lives as such. And, you know, we often talk about the late teens, early 20s, perhaps the whole 20s is a whole bunch of experimentation, and we're trying just on a whole bunch of things. And then into the 30s and 40s, we're really establishing ourselves and we're putting down roots. And we're really living our lives. You know, we've found our place perhaps career-wise, perhaps relationship-wise, perhaps, you know, discern the question of family or not family. All of these sort of like just really ordinary life questions. Who am I? How do I like to express myself? How am I going to live in this body, in this culture, in this lifetime? And then we establish ourselves and we create. And then as we age, it's like coming round the circle, and we're coming to that place where we start to stand back and we realize limited time, probably, more limiting options. And then I really see that there's a force emerges inside of people to start to find that unity and to start to bring things that might have been diverse or dispersed in their lives and start to bring them together. And one of those is the energies of the masculine and the feminine. And, you know, yes, you can get through those 30s and 40s being in a one track, like just relying on your feminine energy or your female way, or your masculine energy, your masculine principles, your masculine way. But you know, when people get the midlife crisis, or they start to feel that tiredness that comes on towards 50 into their early 60s, and that tiredness, it's, I think, because of that one-trackness. That, I mean, the masculine and feminine coming together is such a nourishing, such a potent container. There's a lot of energy in there that really can feed us. So if we're doing it one way or the other way, there's going to be something lacking. And there is, I think, just an innate draw towards the discovery of the other part. And for women, I think there's an additional thing, and I think there's also an additional thing for men, but right now I'll talk about the women's side of it, is that when we move out into the world, predominantly our models are do it like the guys do it, because that's what gets you what you want, that's what's expected, that's the container, the model you step into. So very early on, you know, in our school life, in our university life, in our developing our professions, we learn that the gold standard is to do it in the masculine way, which is logical, rational, very incremental steps ahead. It's kind of more one-focused. You know, when they talk that women have some skills relationally, women tend to have an easier time juggling a whole bunch of things and putting a whole bunch of things together, which gives you a bigger picture, gives you a broader scope. Now, it's sometimes difficult to go from that place then into, okay, now what are we going to take forward, which is the masculine. But if a woman puts that all aside, which I don't really think women can do, and it comes out in certain kinds of, certain ways, sometimes helpful, sometimes not. But even we, maybe particularly in our career lives, and particularly then when we have to start to multitask and do a whole bunch of things, we forget a lot about the feminine, and it probably never has been well rooted in us, because in our culture we have left the feminine behind, and more than that, sometimes directly tried to distance ourselves from it, tried to really denigrate it, and to, in sometimes, inflict some fairly fatal blows to it. And I'm not talking to women particularly, but to this element of the feminine in the world. And sometimes, yes, absolutely, to women directly. But it's also the feminine in men, and it's there. For some men, much more so. When you meet these guys, you kind of go, oh yeah, wow, there's something really interesting there. That often they can hold both really well. Or it might even be that the feminine's much stronger than the masculine. But each person is walking through that dance, whether they're consciously aware of it or not. And it's a very, very important element to keep track of as it moves along. Because if we're one or the other on its own creates a deprivation, creates a weakness, and creates a rigidity. We came into this world where there is so many opposites trying to come together, and the masculine and feminine is one of those. And when you meet people, or when you're involved in a creation that has a really nice blend of the masculine and feminine, either through the person that's embodying it themselves or through the group that has just a good balance, and both are allowed and both are respected, and they find their way to do the dance, it's such a rich experience. And when we have the privilege of being involved in those kinds of things, it feeds us, it nourishes us, and it helps to deal with the tiredness, the weariness, the kind of dryness that can come in when we're just, down that track of productivity. Or just to talk a little bit about the feminine in distortion, which can be wishy-washy, kind of ethereal, kind of like lots of flow, lots of possibilities, lots of scope, lots of holding a whole bunch of stuff, but somehow not the capacity to then bring it in a little bit, and to hold it firmly, and to allow all the possibilities, to pick a few, in a time span, and really then focus and give them what they need and allow them to flourish, while all along allowing for, the thing with the masculine, they get on a bent and then they got their eye on the end goal, but when the feminine's there, it allows that, like, oh, well, we were going here, but maybe, just even consider, oh, but maybe it's this. But does not allow that, oh, maybe it's this, to just take the whole things off the rail. So, it's like, it's a dance, and it's when you're really in it, it's such a pleasure, when you don't get too attached to outcomes, when you don't get too attached to, deadlines, or, not too attached to them, but hold them in some awareness, It's never one or the other, it's that unity.